Hello there and welcome back. Today we have BYD plans to enter Formula 1 and Le Mans, Alpina, first model under BMW ownership, SAIC, Chinese Porsche Taycan clone, and of course we do have news about Tesla because how possibly we would live without news about Tesla. So let's start from BYD. Chinese automaker BYD is reportedly planning to join the most expensive racing series in the world. Yes, we're talking about rumors that are now circulating in internet that BYD is going to join Formula 1 and Le Mans to boost brand awareness, prestige and all of that. Let's just note the irony here. An EV manufacturer with no gasoline cars at all want to join the gasoline-based racing categories to gain recognition. So what happens? What about Formula E? What about EVs as a future? Nobody cares anymore about those ancient caffeine oil-leaked technologies. No, thank you very much. You people go to the future and leave the present to us. Even with current Formula 1 regulation being electrified as at its purest, there is still a combustion engine there. And on top of that, we already saw a lot of rumors that FOM and FIA, FOM is Formula 1 management and FIA, being the governing body that runs all of that, are not exactly against the idea to bring back naturally aspirated engines or even turbo engines without hybrid badges. But it seems like the manufacturer currently involved in F1 are resisting that, because apparently they need to sell hybrids. Their road cars lineup is full of hybrids, so naturally they want to stay Formula 1 hybrid too. And even if it remains the case, it will still be temporary. And Le Mans is the same story. It's still mostly gasoline powered. Yes, there are prototypes, but beyond that you still have GT3, GT4 and the rest proper combustion engines. And Ben Simon, FIA president, has been hinting for years now. I think first hint was somewhere in 2022, where he said that somewhere out there, one day, a factory-backed Chinese F1 team could appear. We will wait, we will see, because Lynk Co is already racing in a touring cars. In case you forgot, there is a literally international series full of front-wheel drive gasoline race cars, and there sits Lynk Co, supposedly one of these electrified brands nowadays, racing a front-wheel drive car, and they are actually doing great. So there is that. Obviously, BYD has a very difficult task in front of them. They need completely rebuild their PR, marketing, their positioning, and probably pay someone a huge amount of money so that something finally happens with brand image. So the people start actually recognize this brand as something else and not just Chinese electric cars. Because you see, the subsidy chair they were sitting on has just been kicked out from them. That was the main thing holding them up, and they were very comfortable sitting on that chair. But China scraps all of its subsidies for 2026. So yes, BYD now is willing to throw any money to anyone just to stay on same level of sales they are right now, and same time to hold on the same production volume. Because this next phase, how long the company can tolerate the pain, is a critical phase. Not even so much for survival in a short term, but simply outlast everybody else. Because if BYD ends up being the last EV manufacturer in China, then even in a much smaller market, they will still feel comfortable. Even though China is not that small market, but compared to world market, it's small. Yeah, 1 billion people living there, but that's not our case. And honestly good, they all had it coming. So yes, I think that someday we will see a BYD enter some motorsport racing, but I also think that it will be temporary. Pum pum. SAIC has unveiled an electric EV that is basically a Porsche Taycan but 3 times cheaper. And pay attention here, in China they show what is essentially a copy of a Porsche Taycan sedan and a wagon form. The sedan is called the Z7 Fastback and the wagon is called Z7T, developed by tech giant Huawei and auto giant SAIC. The Taycan brand appeared just last summer and they already have an H5 crossover that suspiciously looked like an electric one Porsche Cayenne, and while an actual Taycan in China costs $130,000, Taycan one is cost $40,000. And really, the only thing you can say here is that times move on, but China is still doing what it was doing, which is trying to copy the European design car and sell for half of its price. Pum pum. The next story comes out straight out of Germany, because there the first Alpina model was released after the brand was sold to a BMW. Officially the guys come out and say, here's our new Alpina XB7 manufacturer, which is basically an BMW X7, but it is an XB7 Alpina manufacturer. We talked some time ago about BMW buying Alpina, and now Alpina is directly owned by BMW. Before that it was an independent tuning house with its own taste and its own vision, but BMW came, buy them and drag them in a house to make apparently sure that they would never do such things again. And now every car with Alpina badge will be produced by BMW engineers. And this XB7 Alpina manufacturer, in reality, well, it's just a decoration for an X7. You get black wheels, leather inside with some rather questionable lettering, and honestly it looks very weird for an expensive car. Then there is a little punch that saying whatever number is of 120 pieces for probably 120 alternative-minded people who will buy it. And it cost 1.5 times much more than a normal X7. Everything seems to be going great for them. I guess so. So yes, XB7 is basically a slightly dressed up BMW X7, but for 50% money more. And then later they will say that the next Alpina model will supposedly be truly unique creations, proper new developments without that viral, tasteless design. Sure, we believe them, but I don't. Pum pum. Lead the Charge releases its own ranking of the most greenest car on its planet. They have named the most environmentally friendly car manufacturers in the world. We waited, and finally the list has arrived. Now, speaking seriously, we don't give a shit about that list. But there is one interesting observation over here. There is this movement called Lead the Charge. It's an activist organization founded by who the hell knows. And if you look at their partnership page on their official website is just a giant pile of other eco-activist organizations. On the homepage they literally said, but as we say goodbye to fossil fuel cars, we also need to transform their dirty supply chains. In other words, we're not just going to lecture you on how all cars should be battery powered, we're also going to crawl in every supply chain, every production process, every component, and tell you exactly how the cars should be built without producing a CO2. And while you're at it, apparently clearing the entire industrial world too. So this organization put together a report ranking and automakers in their opinion are good and which are obviously worse or terrible. The criteria are absolutely magnificent because you open the chart and the first chapter is called Fossil-free and environmentally sustainable supply chain, which is basically means how heavy your lineup is and how clean are your supply chains and operations. And the funniest thing is that even Tesla scored only 50% in that category. Tesla, an EV manufacturer that doesn't have a proper engine car, scored only 50%. Fine, I guess, whatever. Then there is another line called human rights. Very important stuff for car company, obviously. Then responsible sourcing, whatever that means, I have no idea. It's completely unclear. Maybe some labor standards, maybe some human rights policies, maybe something about inclusivity, maybe something else entirely. But how exactly they are measured any of that? How they quantified? How they turned it into percentage in a neat table? Absolutely no idea. Because if some automaker is generally violating human rights, then presumably there should be legal cases, court, investigation and something concrete. You would think there would be some real process if workers being mistreated, maimed, exploited, whatever. But they don't explain that category at all. They just go, here's human rights, here's no human rights, and here's your score. Trust us. It's just wonderful. Naturally, Tesla ends up leading on the weighted average, then Ford, Volvo, Mercedes-Benz, Volkswagen, well, basically more or less normal car manufacturers. China looks terrible at the chart. Jack gets something like 1% on human rights, 4% on a fossil-free supply chain, and all that nonsense. Surprisingly, Geely scored much better than a BYD, and how they exactly arrived on that, it's just completely unclear. So the only one thing you can say for sure, that a criteria behind that ranking is just pure laughable. And at the very least they should explain it much more properly. And if they generally uncovered some real abuses, maybe some real regulators should be involved in that and deal with those automakers properly. So let's be honest, this is probably not our case here. And overall, it's completely unclear what anyone should do with that ranking report. Presumably, these guys hoped that they will publish that report, pay some money to media to push that report in internet, get bunch of headlines out, and then some number of people will supposedly saw that a Tesla is a good company and go buy a Tesla. Or if they were choosing between Kia and GM, they will go with GM because GM scored much higher score than a Kia. That is not how people buy actual cars, like at all. It's completely different. So what this report is actually for remains unclear. Also personally, I think the most usable idea for this report for them would be to sew it up their ass, and judging by the type, they would probably enjoy it. Pum pum. Tesla patents a speed limiter because of its overheating brakes. And meanwhile, Tesla has proposed to put in speed limiter on its own cars just to stop brakes from overheating. Putting proper brakes from the start is just for losers, but introducing a speed limiter for a driver, now that's a move. To be clear, they haven't do that yet. As far as we know, they just patented that technology for now. The idea is basically like this. Look, the car is very smart, not like a manufacturer, obviously. But the car itself is smart. It knows brake temperature, brake efficiency and all of it. So if some completely maniac is behind the wheel, constantly stopping on one pedal and then on another one, accelerating, braking, then the brakes could overheat and a Tesla would lose one of its clients, and apparently those clients are no longer being made. So, as a current automaker, Tesla wants to keep its target audience alive. Therefore, the car could impose a speed limit once it detects that the brakes are getting too hot. Other than that, yeah, sure, go race it. Unless you have enough battery. And honestly, on the paper, that sounds pretty reasonable. But the bigger point there is that brakes on EVs is a real problem. And this is one of the moments where I can actually defend a Tesla. Because EVs have been quite a while now. All the aftermakers have had time to address this problem. And yet nobody really solved the issue with braking properly. There are two big reasons for that. First, the car is simply heavier, like significantly heavier, and that's put much more stress on braking hardware. Proper brakes are really expensive, like really expensive, and every EV manufacturer is fighting to make a car as cheap as humanly possible, because EVs have already much more expensive components in it. But even if you do install good brakes, that still doesn't guarantee that the problem is solved, because the car has also a regenerative braking. In normal human car, I mean a gasoline car, you brake with your actual brakes or with engine braking. So let's be honest, not so many people rely on engine braking in any serious way. You still end up using brake system. The pads clamp the disc. The system actually works, and most important, it gets used regularly. In an EV, in normal driving conditions, you can move around almost just on regenerative mode without using your brakes. But then, the moment something goes wrong and you actually need to use your brakes, you need to brake hard. Your actual brakes can be rusty, crusty, dirty, just barely used because you were using regenerative mode. And response of those brakes would be soft. And soft is not what you want to learn about your brakes. With brakes, it would be actually nice if things were firm, not soft. The disciples of electric religion will say, "Oh, come on. Automakers aren't stupid, they already pull their parts time to time. They have learned this, there is a software for it, there is a dedicated control unit in your car that will slightly apply the brakes if they haven't been used for a while." Yeah, but it still really didn't solve the issue. It still doesn't, because in emergency, you can still have a brake problem. There is a reason an EV manufacturer thinks about speed limiters in their cars, because their brakes are not coping. And specifically with Tesla, there is an added problem that their brakes are often cheap. They simply do not cope with the car mass or its power. But more broadly, EV brakes are still an issue that have been solved properly yet. So yes, it's entirely possible that down the road we'll see some new entertainment restrictions. Meanwhile, owners of gasoline cars will drive their way as they have drive without touring their own brains. And I guess this is all interesting news that I would like to share with you. Anyway, I'm Kurstorm, drive safe, and I will see you in the next episode.